Veils, Footwashing, and the Holy Kiss. Veils, Footwashing, and the Holy Kiss. Another article from our dear friends over at apologetexpress.org. We want to read through it. You and I, we want to understand. We want to understand what the scriptures have to say about this topical session, this topical conversation. So stick around. Stick around and let's find out what we can know. You and I, what we can know. Stefan Maye with you. AddedSouls.ca is the website. We're over here at the Added Souls studio. I work alongside the East Coast Church of Christ.ca. East Coast Church of Christ.ca. Hope you're doing well. This AM, 8 o'clock a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. We go live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. We stream live on my Facebook page, Added Souls, on Facebook, on my YouTube channel, Stefan Ashmaye, on my Rumble channel, Added Souls, and we also stream live on our TikTok platform. Then we upload that on my Substack account, and Substack throws it out there towards Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Google, and various other locations. By all means, consider subscribing, liking, sharing, drop a comment, all that kind of engagement. So, that's what we want to talk about today. Yesterday, we had ourselves a conversation in regards to head coverings for women during worship. If you haven't seen that session yet, I encourage you to go do so. Check out the archived edition here, and you might find that valuable in your faith. Today, we want to look at veils, footwashing, and the Holy Kiss. Veils, footwashing, and the Holy Kiss. We're going to put up the article on the screen. We're just going to start reading, okay? You and I will have conversation along those lines. All right, apologetexpress.org. Apologetexpress.org. Veils, footwashing, and the Holy Kiss. It says, and I quote this from our dear brother Dave Miller, who wrote the article. It says that the average American, or the average individual, this of course written by our brethren over in America, but for the rest of us all around the world, it is true indeed in the individual on a global scale. The average individual feels that truth is unknowable, and therefore everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion. And I've spoken of this numerous times throughout our sessions throughout the years, within the realm of the isms, right? The trifecta of the ism category that destroys one's ability to recognize objective reality. In other words, relativism, pluralism, emotionalism. And in its most simple and clear understanding, there is no truth. The truth does not exist. The truth does not exist. Therefore, I must create my own personal truth, created in my image. And I know it to be my own personal truth created in my image because I feel it. I am emotionally invested in it. See, that's the realm of the ism. Relativism, pluralism, emotionalism. So the average individual feels that the truth is just unknowable. It just is something no one knows. No one can know. No one can attain it. It just don't exist. Now, if we're talking about, again, and I say this numerous times and repeatedly so, there are subjectivities in our existence, and we welcome them, no doubt. For instance, I prefer a pepperoni pizza, right? Buddy may say, hey, man, I like anchovies on my pizza. Well, I don't like anchovies on my pizza. I mean, I'll eat it if you're offering it to me. And don't get me wrong. It's not that I'm allergic to it. It's that I prefer a pepperoni pizza. It's subjective. It's to each his own. We don't need to become enemies over this, okay? We can agree to disagree here. It's a matter of one's personal opinion. My wife is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Well, you're not going to say the same. You're going to say the same towards your wife. It's subjective. It's okay. We can have a matter of opinion here. Right? One man's trash is another man's treasure. Okay, it's opinion. It's opinion. But there are, among the ocean of opinions here, things that are subjective. There is, indeed, absolutes. objective absolutes that are reality, the truth. It just is. There's no escaping it. It's reality. It's there whether I walk on this earth or not. It existed before me and it'll exist after me. But the average individual now feels that the truth is unknowable. And there was a time in the Western Hemisphere, in my upbringing, no doubt, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that we certainly understood the absolutes, and we understood the difference between the subjective, the pizza toppings opinion, and the absolute. 1 + 1 makes 2, male, female, science, biology, gravity, whatever. Things that are objective and things that are subjective. We understood that. Not anymore. That's long gone now. So the average individual now feels that the truth is just unknowable. Nobody can know the truth. And we find justification for that, don't we? Well, it's not been made clear if there is, so therefore there isn't. Those kind of things. And therefore everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion. Again, there is no truth. The truth, the objective, absolute reality does not exist. No one can know that. So therefore I'm going to create my own personal truth, created in my own personal image, and I'm going to emotionally invest myself into that, so much so that that becomes my own mind, my own reality, and my own conscience. He or she feels that one viewpoint is as good as another. That's why you'll hear quite often these individuals say, well, all sin is the same, sin is sin. Well, there is a category of reality within that, no doubt. All sin will separate you from God. If you are outside of the Christ, if you are outside of the borders, outside of the kingdom's borders, the spiritual kingdom's borders, yeah, every single sin, whether it be in a lower measurement of consequence on this earth or a higher one of measurement of consequence on this earth, it does not matter. You are outside of Christ. So there is a facet of reality within sin is sin, all sin is the same. Well, no, the Bible don't teach it that way, though. The Bible doesn't say, hey, all sin is the same. It doesn't teach it that way. All sin will lead towards eternal destruction. Outside of Christ, it doesn't matter which measurement of sin you are practicing and the measurement of consequence that's taking place. It separates you from God. Yeah, no doubt. But they utilize that, these components of the ism world, right? Relativism, pluralism, and emotionalism. They utilize this as an excuse, as a justification to, well, no one can judge righteously. It's impossible. Because you can only judge righteously if there is an objective absolute reality. There is no objective absolute reality, so none of us can judge each other righteously. It's impossible. All cultures are the same. No one's right, no one's wrong. Everything's okay. And you can see the damage that does in the religious realm and in the political realm, to which both are intertwined, in cooperation. You can't separate them. I've been saying this for so many years. Those who try to deceive themselves into this strange location where we can separate both are just lying to themselves and lying to those around them. Now, they may be doing so ignorantly, sincerely, or they might be doing so maliciously for a selfish ambition, an agenda. But it's impossible. You cannot separate religion from politics. It's impossible. It will never happen. We've been on earth for thousands of years. It's never happened. It's never going to happen. Get it out of your mind. Get rid of it now and just deal with it. It's never going to happen. You're never going to separate one's religious beliefs away from one's policies. It's never going to happen. I mentioned this in a small video thought that I was having yesterday. If you have Buddhists in power, the policies are going to follow. They're going to follow Buddhism. If you have Hindus in power, the Hindu policies are going to come forward. If you have atheism in power, you're going to have atheistic policies. There's no way around this. And our brethren who are trying to say, well, we can separate that, we shouldn't bring this in there, and we shouldn't do this and that. It doesn't matter what you say. It's just this vain virtue signaling. That's all that is. A clutching of pearls, a vain virtue. It doesn't accomplish anything. As a matter of fact, those who typically do so always side with the bad guys. They always side with the bad guys. Well, I didn't vote for Barabbas. I didn't vote for Jesus. I didn't get involved with that because, we have no business getting involved with voting for either Jesus or Barabbas. You just voted for Barabbas. It doesn't matter what you say. That's reality. That's what just happened. You cannot separate it. Either you're going to have a nation with Christian morals and principles. It might not be doctrinally accurate. It probably won't. But that doesn't mean it can be morally upright with the integrity of Christian values and principles. It doesn't matter. You can't separate it. They are cohabitating. They are in cooperation. You cannot separate them. Whatever is found within the people, the home, the neighborhood, the community, the state, the nation, as far as what their religious beliefs and practices are, it's going to find itself in the political policy. So don't even try to come at me with no hogwash about, well, we have to separate that and there's no way that's going to... Who are you talking to? Who are you trying to convince? Yourself? Yeah, it's okay. Get out of the way. Some of us know what's happening, and we want to be good stewards of our existence in these physical vessels on this earth. And we want to proclaim the good news of the Christ so that the community understands and accepts its policies, its values, its principles. So, bit of an excursion there, but that needs to be understood. There's no way around that. No way around that. It's good to see all our friends tuning in, no doubt. Anik with us, Sabi with us, Sheila, Steve, Brandon. It's a pleasure to have all of you as always. We're going to read ourselves an article from our dear friends over at apologeticspress.org, and it's titled Veils, Footwashing, and the Holy Kiss, written by our friend Dave Miller. And it says, and I quote, "The average individual feels that truth is unknowable, and therefore everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion. He or she feels that one viewpoint is as good as another. And no one should be so arrogant or judgmental as to say that one view is correct and all others are wrong." How dare we would say that? That would be so narrow-minded and bigoted, right? That would just not be permissible. That is not even permitted to be entertained, the thought. What, that you think you're right and everybody else is wrong? How dare you think that way? You're obviously the enemy. You're obviously the enemy. And then they will, of course, hashtag the accompaniment to your description, right? Oh, of course, you're a racist. You know that, right? You're a bigot. You understand that, right? You're a Nazi. You're an extremist. You're a terrorist. You're a phobic this. You're a phobic that, right? You know that. The minute you say that you know a thing in a world where nobody knows the truth, you're the enemy. You know that, right? After all, and what's interesting too, to this degree, if you reason with me here, what's interesting from those who fall prey to that position, the lunacy of the law of lawlessness. What happens is they're so determined to have us believe that no one knows the truth. No one can know the truth, but it's somehow, simultaneously, in their self-righteous hypocrisy, no one knows the truth, but they know you're wrong. No one is permitted to say to any other man that they're wrong, but I can tell you you're wrong if you do so. It's the height of hypocrisy. It's as blind as you can get. And sadly, that's what we have now in the notion of religious error and in the socio-political realm, with individuals who just don't know which washroom to walk into because they no longer can define male and female. Welcome to the future. Again, this came about with the lunacy or the misguided path that we took, trying to tell ourselves there is no such thing as absolutes. That's what happened. That's it. The article continues and it says, after all, one cannot be certain as to what is ultimately right and what is ultimately wrong. That's the position they take. And who is to say who is right and who is wrong? Like, how dare you even attempt to try and say that one is right and one is wrong? You can't. It don't exist. And the minute you do, I'm certain you're wrong. Now, come on. You see this, right? You can see the hypocrisy in this. We don't need to fear these people, by the way. They want us to fear them. They want us to be submissive to their agenda. We don't need to anymore. No, we're done with that. No one knows the truth. You're not allowed to even dare entertain the thought that there's something that's right and something that's wrong. And the minute you do, I know you're wrong. You see the hypocrisy there, right? Okay. The article continues. It says, this cultural inclination has infiltrated the church. It has. It's contaminated us. It's contaminated the church, so much so that some local assemblies that used to belong to Christ have now withdrawn himself from his spirit. It manifests itself among those who insist that we in the churches that belong to Christ have been too narrow and dogmatic about our doctrinal positions. Our doctrinal positions. They say we have assumed that we're right and that other religious groups are just wrong. It's just a mere assumption. It's not based on any reality whatsoever. It's just one day we woke up and said, hey, you know what? I think this is right and this is wrong. Because again, in the mind of the individual who has been infected by that ism, it's impossible to know the truth. So the individual who stands up and says, well, I know the truth, somehow he must have come up with that idea from just thin air. Just thin air. One day he woke up out of bed and said, you know what? I'm just going to create my own truth. Now that's what they do. It's the idea of if I don't know, no one knows. And that is so damaging. That causes so much damage. I don't know, so therefore nobody else knows. You can't know it because I don't know it. See, it's impossible for you to know it because no one can know it. I don't know it, so you can't know it. No one knows that 1 + 1 makes 2. If you take one orange and another orange, it makes 2 oranges. No one can know that. So if you say you know that, if you say 2 oranges, one orange plus 1 orange makes 2 orange, if you say that, you're wrong. See, I know it's impossible to determine between right and wrong, but the minute you try to say you do, I know you're wrong. It's the height of hypocrisy. We've made too much of some issues and too little of others, they say. And our rigid doctrinal stance has, in turn, caused us to be unloving and intolerant of alternative viewpoints in churches. We have to be tolerant and accepting. Strengthen diversity, guys. Strengthen diversity. We must invoke and embrace all sorts of religious viewpoints. Everybody's right. Nobody's wrong. Everything's okay. That's what we have. That's what we have. Why are we where we are at currently? Because of that. That's why. That's why. Now, is it true? Is it an objective, absolute reality of our existence that some individuals, some Christians, they know the truth, but they have no love in their heart? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are Christians, quote unquote, gospel preachers, elders and deacons, who are scholarly, who know the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, the 2 Testaments in all their languages, the Greek, the Aramaic, the Hebrew. Oh, they know it very well. They can quote the Bible. But they have no love. They have no compassion. They have no benevolence. They hate you. They're jealous. They're greedy. They're bitter. They sow discord, unrighteous division. They take preeminence. They're filled with pride, but they know the truth, and they proclaim it, don't they? And in our lack of discernment, we praise them. Oh, what a fine gospel preacher. He's destroyed another church, another family, and another friendship. What a fine brother. He's so righteous. Of course it exists. Of course it's a reality. Jesus dealt with these things in the first century as well. Look at the Pharisees. Jesus himself in chapter 23 of the Gospel of Matthew, verse 1 would say, and following would say, hey, listen, when they quote from the scriptures, you do what the scriptures say, but you don't follow their behaviors. They are self-righteous hypocrites. They only seek the praise of men. They're greedy. They're using you. They're gatekeepers. They have you submissive. They're manipulative. They're deceiving. They'll intimidate you. They'll flatter you. Don't follow their behaviors. Their hearts are driven by the ambition of corruption. They're evil workers. Don't do what they do. But when the scriptures come out of their lips, you can follow the scriptures. Don't follow them. It's the same today. Of course that exists. Of course that exists. Many of us have been victims, abused by those kinds of individuals who creep into the church. Wolves in sheep's clothing, if you will. But is the truth in of itself, the scriptures and its reality, its objective absolutes, is that somehow rigid and hateful and unloving? No, of course not. The truth is the truth. So all of these slanderous attacks, if you will, these these attempts to demonize reality, the truth which sets us free. Of course, the entire line of thinking proceeds from a humanistic, pluralistic mindset. It doesn't come from a pure, humble heart in the scriptures. It just doesn't do that. Okay? It constitutes the classic attempt to dodge accountability and responsibility. That's what it does. It always does that. That's what it does. I know. I used to live there for decades. I understand the mind frame quite well. I used to live there for decades. I went as far as a human being can go from God. As far from him as one can go. I wanted to go, I went. I delved into the excess of the flesh and one's own personal desires and lust, lawlessness and lunacy, all of it. From every quarter. Religious lunacy in all its facets. From the pagan realm, the heathen lifestyle, denominational attributes and characteristics, all of it. It's just a mess out there. When Jesus said, quote, you shall, accountability, independent accountability through the intellectual capability, you shall know. Well, that's impossible. Why would he dare say such a thing? How bigoted of him. How narrow-minded of him. No one can know the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. John 8:32. Well, that can't be the case. The truth just don't exist. Well, of course it exists. It always has existed. It's right there in front of our eyes. Thy word is truth. John 17:17. Truth is reality, and though it has various descriptive components to reality, truth, in a nutshell, in its most simple understanding and description, it's reality. So reality, thy word is reality. It calls us away from the lunacy of myth and lies. Lawlessness, it sets us free from it. All sorts of false religious beliefs and traditions and shrines. From all sorts of lawless excess in the flesh and its desire, its lust. It sets us free from that burden of chaos and destruction that comes through the consequence of sin. It destroys everything. It destroys local assemblies. It destroys families. It destroys friendships. And those who hold fast to the paternal ancestry they belong to with the devil, liars and murderers, they just thrive with a passion to devour. The truth sets us free from all of them and all of that nonsense, all that foolishness, all that garbage. He was showing that we must be right about certain matters. There's just that's it. We do not know everything, but we can know some things. We don't know everything. We aren't to be know-it-alls, but we can certainly know something. Wouldn't you agree? We can certainly know some things. It may not be everything, but some things. I don't know how to fly a plane. I'm not a big machine operator. I can, change a tire, change the oil. I can drive a car. I can drive a truck. I can drive the lawnmower, push lawnmower or drive lawnmower. I can do several things that men do. And men do well, and I can do it well. I can't fly a plane. So I know some things, but I don't know everything. Those things that God expects us to know, we can know. He revealed it to us in the perfect law of liberty. You mean to tell me, through his divine, infinite power and wisdom, he took the time for us, time to which you and I are submissive in this natural realm, time. He took 15 to 1600 years through 40 chosen vessels, 40 men from different geographical locations, cultures, and kinds in our historical timeline, and he brought them all together with one theme, instruction, guided by the mind of the Holy Spirit, just to say, well, it's okay. I suppose I didn't communicate properly. I guess my efforts were just for naught. They were all in vain. I mean, obviously, no one can know what the Bible says. Of course not. To say we can't understand what the Bible says is to say that God is a God of confusion. The problem's not with God. The problem's not with the clarity of what he's written. The problem's with us not wanting to submit to it. That's always been the problem. God expects us to know what he has revealed to us to know. We can know the truth. Any society that withdraws itself, neglects and rejects truth is going to fall. And that's exactly what's happened to our nation. It's fallen, and it continues to fall at rapid pace. Only a decade. It only took a decade. It only took a decade. That's it. 10 years. 10 years. That's it. A decade. Flew by like the wind. Gone. Our culture, our heritage, our pioneers, our people, gone. It's over. It's over. From the beauty and blessing of paths and policies that gave us liberty, independence, that we could prosper, that we could have access to all sorts of wonderful opportunities, gone by the minute. Gone by the minute. And it's all because of these things. Because what we're talking about here. That's why. It's good to see you, Carolyn. Good to see you, Nancy. Always a pleasure to have all of you with us in our session. We can know the truth. We can know the truth. And the truth is going to influence the policy. That's it. We can know that we know. Right? You can know that you know. Like, it's not like this kind of strange, uncertain doubt. Do I know the truth? I don't know the truth. What is the truth? Now, if you've been manipulated away from the reality of your sane mind, then you need to heal. You need to find that reality once again. That's what happens when you are snared in the lunacy out there. It takes time to heal, but you have to make the free will decision to move forward, to seek ye first. And God will heal us. He will bless us. We can know that we know. 1 John 2:3. We can know which things we have to know. And we can know which things we do not have to know. I know this sounds quite elementary almost. But man, let's never underestimate the ignorance of our surroundings. Just look at ourselves before we started following Jesus, how ignorant we were. Ignorant doesn't mean a stupid idiot or moron. Okay, it doesn't mean that. It can in certain categories along with, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means a lack of understanding. And I'm quite ignorant when it comes to flying a plane. I don't know how to fly a plane. I'm ignorant to it. You see, doesn't mean my mind is again in the category of what would be described as stupid or idiot or moron. Though some may beg to differ. But you see, that's the thing. We can know the truth, but we must analyze each matter logically and scripturally. That's the key component here. To know the truth is to know the evidence that reveals it. Here is a chair. I'm sitting on a chair. I understand that it's a chair. I've learned it's a chair, and I sat on it. But why do I trust sitting on it? Because perhaps I've learnt the engineering behind it, the structure and the build. How did it come to be? It's not an accident. Someone built that. What did he use? How did he build it? What's the structure? Does it have structural integrity? We need to learn the chair. Who made the chair? How did he make the chair? It's structural integrity. Can I sit on the chair? Can I trust the chair? Is the chair a trustable item in which I can sit on? Where does it come from? Who built it? Pleasure to see you, my dear brother Yubong. Good to have you with us here on our session. Okay, so for example, some have concluded that God wants women to wear head coverings when they worship in the presence of men. We read about this yesterday. We gave a detailed, themed, topical session yesterday in regards to head coverings. So, for example, Some have concluded that God wants women to wear head coverings when they worship in the presence of men. They believe this conclusion follows from the teachings of 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 16, to which we went through yesterday. However, the wearing of a veil in Corinth conveyed a meaning within Greco-Roman culture that is not conveyed in American culture or Canadian culture, or whatever culture we have left in this fallen nation. It was a cultural phenomenon. Judge in yourselves, verse 13. We went through that yesterday. To them, the veil symbolized a woman's submission to male authority, verse 10. The removal of the veil symbolized a woman's rejection of male authority and was equivalent to the shameful practice of shaving the head, an act done by women of ill repute, verse 5 and 6. Since the symbolism of the veil in Corinthian culture was in harmony with the abiding principle of female submission to male leadership, Corinthian Christians were admonished to conform to the cultural practice. And we spoke of that in great detail yesterday. Again, if you've not viewed or listened to that session, I encourage you to do so. It's archived yesterday, answering the question, must our sisters wear head coverings on Sunday morning worship? We continue with the article from our friends over at apologeticpress.org. It says, and I quote, the application of this injunction is that Christians who find themselves in cultures today where a particular cultural symbol undergirds an abiding biblical principle should conform to that cultural propriety. Head coverings have no such significance in American culture or Canadian culture and vary throughout the world. You can compare that, of course, with certain locations in the scriptures, such as Genesis 24, verse 65, or chapter 29, verse 25, chapter 38, verse 14 and 15, Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 1 and 3, chapter 6, verse 7. If Paul intended for veils to be enjoined upon all Christian women in all cultures for all time, then three conclusions follow. A hat is no substitute, and we spoke about that yesterday. A hat is just not a substitute. And what about the hat? Is the hat intrusive in the congregation? Is it immodest? Is it bringing attention to itself? Finding one in self-righteous hypocrisy. It's a sin if I don't have a hat, but yet your hat is immodest and bringing attention to itself. Uh-oh, what are we going to do? That's what happens when you seek to bind law on brethren in which God never bound on his people. Veils must be worn outside the worship assembly as well, by the way. If we're going to follow the strict legalistic moment, out of its context, no doubt, making it a practical application where God never put one, well, we have to do this. We have to do it the right way. Veils must be worn outside the worship assembly as well, and those who refuse must be urged to shave their heads. Now, this is a very difficult understanding for those of us who may have been born and raised in a church in which we accepted a misguided interpretation. Because we feel we're doing something wrong against God. Our conscience is telling us we're doing something wrong against God if we don't do this thing, this law that has been enforced. No, you're being liberated, ultimately. You're being liberated. You're drawing closer in your faith, stronger in your faith. You're being liberated. Now, if you of conscience need to do so, then do so. God's blessing be upon you. Go ahead. But you cannot bind it as a matter of salvation. You cannot do that. And any honest student of the scriptures comes to know that. If you are humble and you recognize the context, rightly handling the scriptures, asking the right questions, you will come to know you just cannot bind that. Another area of confusion about which the truth may be ascertained is the, quote, holy kiss. Both Paul and Peter urged first century Christians to greet each other with a holy kiss. Romans 16:16, 1 Corinthians 16:20, 2 Corinthians 13:12, 1 Thessalonians 5:26, 1 Peter 5:14, a holy kiss. Was this injunction intended to be an abiding feature of Christianity? Like, is this a thing that must take place? Does God want Christians today to practice a holy kiss, even as he desires that baptism, prayer, and the Lord's Supper be observed? Is it that same doctrinal absolute? Or are we lacking the science of interpretation here? Are we at a deficit? Are we missing the mark? Are we misguided? Have our pastors taught us wrong? Have we put more trust in our pastors than the scriptures? Kissing as a greeting predated Christianity. 1 Samuel 20:41, 2 Samuel 29, Matthew 26:49, Luke 7:45, Acts 20:37. Americans, individuals here, Americans and Canadians, if you will, typically have been unable to relate to kissing as a standard form of greeting. I've never done it. I'm not too comfortable doing that. I'm not going to do that. However, if it's an objective, absolute doctrine of Christ in which we must do in the same category of repentance, baptism, prayer, well, then I guess I'm going to have to learn to do it and get comfortable with it. It's just not a thing. Now, if you go to certain other locations, you may go to European locations where they kiss each other on both sides of the cheek and stuff like that. That perhaps so. That's cultural to them. That's how they do things, right? It's a cultural thing. What do we do over here? Well, we may give each other a handshake. We shake each other's hand, right? We may do the side hug, the bro thing, the side hug with our sisters. We want to keep it decent, morally upright. And in a culture that has been enamored or Corinthianized by sexual perversion, you have to kind of set forth laws and boundaries so as to not become a body of reproach in the community. Okay, so typically, of course, we have, Americans typically have been unable to relate to kissing as a standard form of greeting. They shake hands or after a pat on the back, stuff like that. However, hugging has become increasingly prominent in recent years. We over here at the East Coast congregation, we all give each other hugs. We shake each other's hands. It's very affectionate. It's loving. It's kind. It's decent. It's upright. It's fellowship. It's a wonderful and warm, approachable greeting. And we enjoy it greatly because we love each other. That's the cultural norm for us. And it should be church cultural norm, by the way. Paul could not have been commanding Christians to start kissing each other as a form of greeting. They were already doing so, if we're logically reasoning here, since it was happening before. Rather, Paul was, quote, applying Christian principles. Okay? That's what was happening. Paul was applying Christian principles to the existing and widespread cultural practice of kiss greetings by urging them to keep their greeting holy. May the motive of your heart in your greeting be pure. May the motive of your heart in greeting be pure. Welcoming. It must come from a good place in the heart. That's what needs to be upheld. Applying Christian principles to the existing widespread cultural practice of kiss greetings by urging them to keep their greetings holy. Far from enjoying kissing, he was requiring holy kissing. He was telling Christians to make their kiss greetings a sanctified activity, set apart for, or in line with, proper Christian living. It's holy, it's sanctified, it's set apart, it's different than the world. It's a true and genuine, loving, welcoming greeting. He was instructing them, since, because it's already taking place and you've been doing so for a long time now, since you kiss, when you kiss, make it holy. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Have the motive of your heart be genuine and kind and approachable, loving towards your brother and sister. Do that. That's what the important principle is found here. When you shake hands, when you give each other a pat on the back, when you hold each other's hand and wrist, elbow, do so with true fondness and love, tenderness towards your brother or sister. Be genuine. Be called out. Be holy. Be different. In Peter's case, his use of, quote, love is from agape, referring, again, to the holy, pure, selfless love that ought to exist between Christians. No doubt, if Paul were writing to a 21st century American audience, he would have said something like, greet each other with holy hugs, implying that such touching, especially between males and females, carries an inherent sexual danger. There are cultures where men hold hands. It's very strange over here. It's a strange concept for us in the Western Hemisphere here, that men just walk down the road and hold hands. But some cultures do that, and they do it out of a pure, kind, loving heart. But it's strange over here. That's not our culture. That's not how we grew up. That's something that's quite different to us. Over here in our culture, that's something that would fall in the category of being gay and not being masculine, man. So again, when in Rome, fine. But when you're not in Rome, it's culturally different. Doesn't mean it is inherently sinful. It's just the perception of the culture, which changes, by the way, just like foul language. Just like foul language. Foul language changes in culture. I assure you, in another 10 years, there might be an invention of a word that will be a bad word. Because men like to invent bad words. Or they love to invent words and then make them bad words. And that becomes culturally binding on us as Christians not to participate in what is seen as a foul language. But you separate the culture from the word, there's really no foulness to it. You understand that, right? That's why Christians can't participate in filthy, foul language, because it is culturally seen and understood as foul and filthy language, and God binds that upon us in our conscience. We can't participate in that. It brings reproach. It does not make us approachable. We can't participate in that. But that doesn't mean we don't understand that the fact it exists is because man said this is a bad word. I came to know culturally while I was in America that there are certain words that we utilize over here in Canada quite fluently that are not considered bad words, that are considered bad words over in America. I didn't know that. So I just spoke them, and they're like, hey man, that's a bad word. I'm like, what do you mean it's a bad word? Apparently it's a bad word. Well, where I come from, where we grew up, it's not a bad word. It's not a bad word. But we're submissive to that. Again, bit of an excursion, but to the principal point. Greet each other with holy hugs is kind of what would be implied in the principle here, implying that such touching, especially between males and females, carries an inherent sexual danger. A third practice, the article continues, from our dear friends over at apologeticspress.org. A third practice that requires clarification in order to understand its proper application is foot washing. So the article is kind of touching veils, head coverings for women. It's touching holy kisses, and now it's going to touch foot washing. And it began explaining that the reason at times that we just fall prey to certain things or do not interpret the scriptures properly because we fall prey to the isms, liberalism, progressivism, right? Change agents, and those who don't want to fall, or those that do not want to follow the doctrine of Christ accurately. They seek to liberate us from conserving holy traditions, doctrinal accuracies. A third practice that requires clarification in order to understand its proper application is foot washing. Jesus literally startled and shocked the disciples on the occasion when he insisted upon washing their feet. John 13:120. Matter of fact, you and I, if we've read the text, we know that Jesus himself, and he was speaking, of course, of a spiritual principle. If you don't let me wash your feet, you can't go to heaven. There was a principle there, a very powerful one. It's nearly as surprising to find religious groups today who believe that Jesus was instituting an abiding occurrence, a law. If you don't do it, you are condemned. You are damned if you don't wash others' feet. A worship act to be observed ritualistically in the practice of Christianity. It must be done. As a matter of fact, the washing of feet in first century Palestine was a common cultural amenity that was necessary due to the dry, dusty road conditions and the footwear of the day. In other words, sandals. You can read about that in Genesis 18:4, 19:2, 24:32, 43:24, Judges 19:21, 1 Timothy 5:10. In a typical Middle Eastern setting, several social courtesies were ordinarily extended to guests. These expressions of hospitality included the kiss greeting, anointing, and caring for the guests' animals, in addition to providing food and shelter. All sorts of scriptural evidence for that, the article reveals. Western culture typically has a completely different list of social amenities, including taking a guest's coat, offering something to drink, and asking the guest to be seated. This is kind of how you and I grew up. Perhaps take off your shoes at the door kind of stuff. Ask before, you just don't storm into my house with your dirty shoes on, walk into my house, open my fridge, and start taking stuff. It's not that I wouldn't offer it to you. That's the purpose. You come in, you ask, must I take my shoes off? If I say, no, you absolutely do not need to take your shoes off, then it's at your discretion. You either do it yourself anyways, or you keep them on. That's proper. That's upright. That's decent. That's respectful. Could I have a glass of water? Absolutely. Forgive me. I should have asked you if you wanted a glass of water even sooner. Want some coffee? Want something to drink? In a culture where household servants were in abundant supply, the task of washing a guest's dusty feet normally would have been performed by a servant of the host. This fact is what made Jesus' action so repugnant to the disciples. They were disgusted that Jesus would lower himself to perform such demeaning labor. Since the disciples of Jesus already were practicing foot washing, Jesus was simply using the cultural custom to teach a spiritual principle. That is why we prefaced his action by noting they would not understand the significance of what he was about to do. John 13:7. That is why, when he finished, he asked the question, quote, "Do you know what I have done to you? Do you know what I have done to you?" Verse 12. Obviously, they knew that he had washed their feet. If he was merely urging them to continue this common practice, they would have understood his injunction instantly. But that was not the point he was attempting to get across to them. Logically so. You and I can understand this. He was teaching self-humiliation and forgiveness. We too must be humble enough to correct our mistakes and receive the forgiveness that Jesus offers. It's a matter of humility and servitude. It's a principle. Jesus didn't say, pray this same prayer in vain and repetitiously. He said, pray like this. This is how you should pray. Here's the principle of your prayer. Here's how you should focus and function your prayer towards God. Here's how it should be done. This is like a template to help you form your own independent prayer towards God. Here's a point system that helps you pray like this. But he's not saying pray this very same prayer verbatim in repetition, in idle, vain repetition. It's the principle behind it. We must be willing to treat others better than ourselves by serving them and showing concern for the fulfillment of their needs. It would be a simple matter if we could fulfill this edict by ritualistically washing another's feet. However, Jesus was conveying the fact that the humility and unassuming servant attitude that he wants us to display require a far more diligent, consistent dedication of one's daily behavior. That's the point here. Brethren have to stop thinking this way. Which way? That the thing is the hat on the head, the veil. That the thing is the kiss. That the thing is the foot washing. That the thing is the plate in which the unleavened bread is found. That the thing is the cup in which the fruit of the vine is found. We make the thing that is not the thing. It's not the thing. So let's not make it the thing. We have to learn the principle. Humility, love, servants, serving, authority, submission to authority. That's what it's about. The law is useless if we do not know the lawmaker. You can know the Bible from beginning to end. In Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. You can quote the whole Bible from the memory of your mind, from the academic pursuit of your educational purpose, it's all for naught. It's all in vain if it's not combined in cooperation with a pure motive of the heart. You can wear something on your head. You can wear a veil. You can wash feet. You can give each other a kiss. It's useless. The principle is the humility of one's heart. It must be a true and passionate service. That's the key. Law and love combined. Law and love combined. There are many other locations in the scriptures in which individuals make the thing that is not the thing, and they focus on the thing that's not really the thing. And then they create a whole genre of dogmatic, ritualistic, religious enforcement. Jesus came and said, you don't need to follow these people who do that anymore. You don't need to fall prey to these ordinances and all these laws, to which, again, and I mentioned this yesterday, the Pharisaical kind, the diatrophic dividers, these individuals are intelligent. They are cunning. They know how to find book, chapter, and verse and interpret it very, very close to the truth. So much so that they will charm you into believing they are righteous. But within the pocket detail, the devil being in there, it's driven for their own selfish ambition. It's to control you. It's to have you submit to their law. You can't do anything in the local assembly unless it goes through me. That's how they function. That's how they function. Now, they will project, they will gaslight, they will make you out to be the guilty while they are guilty. They'll make themselves out to be the victim while you are truly the victim. And they'll do this by binding all sorts of law. Because they make the thing that is not supposed to be the thing, the thing. They put greater importance in the dish that holds the unleavened bread than the unleavened bread. They put more importance in the plastic container than they do the fruit of the vine. They put more importance on the kiss than the holy. They put more importance on washing feet than they do humility and service. They put more authority in themselves. That's why they condemn. They create a law, find you guilty of that law, for breaking that law, and condemn you. They never apply it to themselves, but they will apply it to you. Can't fall prey to those things. Can't fall prey to those things. These individuals, they will make the four walls the thing, and not the souls that are found in the four walls. Can't fall prey to these individuals. We know what they look like. We know how they operate. We had some in our life infiltrate our life through the guise and masquerade of friendship. And they took advantage of us, and they manipulated us. And they caused us much pain and sorrow. And they tried to play the victim when the witnessed accounts and evidence publicly marked them. Evil brethren do evil things. And they will utilize all these categories to control. And they will be some of them firmly convinced in their conscience they're on the way to heaven as righteous gospel preachers. They aren't. And they're going to have a sad, sober moment when they appear before Christ. There is fear to be had. But you and I, we've been liberated from all of that. That's what Jesus came in the first century. He's like, I'm liberating you from all of that. The forgiveness of sins. You don't need these individuals anymore, these gatekeepers, these Pharisaical kinds, the socio-political persuasion and corruption of the Sanhedrin. You don't need them. You just need Jesus. He came to liberate us, to have freedom away from all those things. To make the important thing the important thing. Love for one another. compassion, forgiveness, healing, unity, benevolence, growth, to evangelize, to proclaim the good news of His Majesty's kingdom, and all who seek legal citizenry therein. We have hope. We have heaven to look forward to. The scriptures would say that some seek to infiltrate and to investigate your liberties so as to take you away from them. And we've witnessed that. We know the damage that happens with these wolves in sheep's clothing. Christ came to liberate us from those things, from those delinquencies, from those lawless individuals. He's come to save us from that. Why would we want to return to that? And there's an ocean of religious error out there that is just enamored with it. And sadly, it has infiltrated many local assemblies that used to belong to Jesus. And these sorts have infiltrated these congregations that used to belong to Jesus. And Jesus has since withdrawn His Spirit from those locations. I know. You know it too. You know it. We all live in locations where you will find these congregations that have a sign outside that have the name of Christ, but Christ don't live there anymore. We can know that as an absolute truth. See, we've been set free from that. We've been set free from that, been liberated from that, those shackles, that anxiety, that confusion, that tyranny, that oppression at the hands of Pharisaical gatekeepers, the judges who decide what you can and cannot do, who make themselves the authority. We've been set free from that. Ours that had abused us and taken advantage of us were so toxic. We couldn't even purchase a gift for another brother or sister in Christ without having it go through them, to which they would take and take credit for, by the way. That you couldn't do nothing. You couldn't do anything. And the point was to extinguish and push you out. We've been set free from that. We've been set free from that. That foolishness, that hate, those sowers of discord, those prideful, controlling, toxic individuals. We've been set free from that lawlessness. Why would we want to return there with all sorts of binding law upon one another? No, let's be set free. We have to remain within the doctrine of Christ. But His burden is light. His yoke is easy. There's liberty in Christ. Stefan Maya is my name. addedsouls.ca is my website. I labor alongside the East Coast, churchofchrist.ca. We're on the East Coast. We're over here in New Brunswick, Canada. We're on the East Coast. And we are the church. We are the church that belongs to Jesus Christ. No, not of Latter-day Saints. We have nothing to do with that. We are independent. We have no earthly headquarters. Our sole source of religious authority is the Bible. You can read up about all that at eastcoastchurchofchrist.ca or addedsouls.ca. We began as a very small group, and we are healthy and growing. We've been healthy and growing throughout the years. It's God's work. It's a beautiful thing. We'd love to have you. We'd be honored to have you. Come study with us. Stay focused and stay positive. You are certainly loved and appreciated. Lord willing, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time, we'll have ourselves another session. We go live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. We go live on our Facebook, Added Souls page, on my YouTube, Stefan Ashmaye channel, on my Added Souls Rumble channel, and we also stream live on our TikTok platform. Afterwards, I upload it on my Substack account, and from Substack, it distributes it on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Google, and various other locations. Good stuff. Lord willing, tomorrow morning, man. Peace out.